My name is Jane Miller. I'm 68 years old, and I live in a luxury mansion in Naples, Florida, that my son Chris never imagined I could buy. 2 years ago, that same son kicked me out of his house, screaming, "You stinky old lady, get out of here and never come back." What he didn't know is that while he was kicking me out like a stray dog, I was already the owner of a trucking company valued at more than $8 million. Listen to this story until the end, because it will change the way you see how some children treat their parents when they think they have nothing to lose. It all started on a Friday afternoon in March, 2 years ago. I was living in the basement of my son Chris's house in Naperville, a suburb outside of Chicago. It was a damp, poorly ventilated space that he had set up as my room after my husband Robert died 4 years ago. Chris lived upstairs with his wife Pamela and my 2 grandchildren, Dylan and Abby, aged 15 and 12. That afternoon, I was in my basement room organizing my few personal belongings when I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. It was Chris, wearing that angry face he always made when he had to talk to me about something serious. "Mom, come upstairs, we need to talk," he said in a tone I didn't like at all. "Of course, sweetie. I'll be right up," I replied, putting my things away. I went up the stairs to the living room where the whole family was gathered. Chris was 42 years old, worked as an administrator at an insurance company, and had always complained that he didn't earn enough money. He lived in a small townhouse in a modest neighborhood, had a second-hand car, and lived a pretty tight life financially. Pamela was sitting on the sofa with the children by her side. You could tell they had been talking about something important before they called me. "Mom, sit down," Chris said, pointing to a chair. "We need to talk about your situation." "My situation? What's wrong with my situation?" I asked, not understanding where this conversation was going. Chris cleared his throat and looked me straight in the eye. "Mom, you've been living here for 4 years since Dad died. At first we thought it would be temporary, but this can't go on like this." I just stared at him, confused. "What do you mean it can't go on like this?" Chris got up from the sofa and started pacing around the living room. "Mom, look at reality. You're 68 years old. You get a Social Security check for $800 a month. You don't have your own house. You have no savings. You have nothing. You live in our basement like a tenant who doesn't pay rent." His words stunned me. "Chris, I help around the house in every way I can. I watch the kids when you 2 are working. I do the shopping. I clean. I cook." "Mom," Pamela interrupted, "it's not about whether you help or not. It's about this house being too small for 5 people. The kids are growing up, and they need their space. We also need our privacy as a couple." Dylan, my older grandson, looked up from his phone. "Grandma, my friends make fun of me when I tell them you live in our basement. They say you sound like a homeless person with no place of your own." His words cut me deep. "Dylan, your grandmother is not homeless," I said, trying to stay calm. "Of course you're not homeless, Mom," Chris said, "but you can't keep living here forever either." Abby, my younger granddaughter, chimed in too. "Grandma, why don't you buy a house like all my friends' grandmas? Emily's grandma has a beautiful apartment with a balcony full of plants." "Honey," I explained, "Grandma doesn't have enough money to buy a house. Then why don't you work?" she asked innocently. "Abby, Grandma is already retired," her mother told her. "She can't work anymore." Chris sat down in front of me again. "Mom, Pamela and I have been talking and we've come to a conclusion. We think it's best for everyone if you find another place to live." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you kicking me out of the house, Chris?" "I'm not kicking you out, Mom. I'm asking you to find a solution to your situation. There are very good nursing homes where you would be well taken care of." "A nursing home? But I'm perfectly fine to live by myself." Chris shook his head. "Mom, you can't live alone. You don't have a house. You don't have money to rent anything decent. You don't have the resources to support yourself. The only realistic option is a nursing home." Pamela came over and sat next to me. "Jane, don't take this the wrong way, but since you've been living here, we've had a lot of problems. The kids can't make noise because they bother you. We can't have guests over because there's no space. We can't do any renovations on the house because your room is in the basement. Besides," Chris continued, "it's a financial problem for us too. You eat here, you use water, electricity, heating. Those are extra expenses that we have to cover." "Chris," I said, "I contribute my Social Security check to the household expenses. Mom, your $800 check doesn't even cover half of what you cost here. Food, utilities, everything is more expensive when there's one more person in the house." Dylan spoke up again. Grandma, honestly. Sometimes it's awkward having to explain to my friends why you live in our basement. It makes it seem like you don't have money to live on your own. And when my friends come over, Abby added, I have to tell them they can't go down to the basement because that's where Grandma lives. It's weird. I was silent for a few minutes, processing everything they were saying. My own family was telling me I was a burden, that my presence caused them problems, that they were embarrassed to explain my situation to their friends. And have you looked at any homes? I finally asked. Yes, Chris replied immediately. There's a really good one in Aurora called Street Joseph's Residence. They have single rooms, a doctor on call 24/7, activities for seniors, meals included. With your Social Security and the help you can get from the state, you could afford it without any problem. Pamela nodded. Jane, we went to visit it and it's very nice. You'd have your own room, your own bathroom, people your age to talk to. It would be much better for you than being cooped up here in the basement. And what if I don't want to go to a home? I asked directly. Chris sighed deeply. Mom, you don't have many options. You can't keep living here indefinitely. You don't have money to rent an apartment. You don't have family that can take you in. The home is the only logical solution. The kids got up from the sofa. Can we go now? Dylan asked. I have soccer practice in an hour. And I'm meeting my friends at the mall, Abby added. Chris looked at his children, and then he looked at me. See, Mom? The kids have their own lives, their activities. They don't need Grandma here all the time taking care of them like when they were little. It's all right, I told my grandchildren. You can go to your activities. Dylan came over to give me a kiss on the cheek. Grandma, don't be mad, but it really would be better if you had your own house. Abby gave me a kiss too. Grandma, at the home you can make friends, and you won't be so lonely. After the kids left, the conversation continued with Chris and Pamela. Mom, Chris said to me, I understand this is difficult for you, but you have to be realistic. You can't keep living like a college student with no place of your own. Jane, Pamela added, we also have a right to our privacy, to our space, to do what we want with our house without constantly thinking about how it might affect you. When do you want me to leave? I asked, resigned. Chris exchanged a look with Pamela. Mom, we don't want to throw you out overnight, but we can't wait forever either. We'll give you a month to find a spot in the home and organize your move. 1 month. My own son was giving me 1 month to disappear from his life. That night, after a silent dinner, I went down to my basement room and stared at the few things I had. A small bed, an old dresser, a nightstand, some photos of Robert and me in better times. Everything fit into 2 suitcases. It was the perfect picture of an old woman who had achieved nothing in life. But Chris didn't know something very important. He didn't know that his mother, whom he considered a poor, helpless retiree, had a secret she had kept for over 15 years. While he saw me as a pensioner living on $800 a month, I was actually the owner of Miller Transportation, a trucking company that moved goods all over the country and generated millions in profits. The story of how I became the owner of that company began exactly 16 years ago, when Robert was still alive, and Chris had just married Pamela. At that time, I was working as a truck driver for a company called Mediterranean Trucking. It was a tough job that required me to spend many days away from home, but it paid well, and I enjoyed driving on the open road. The owner of Mediterranean Trucking was a man named Stephen Rogers, about 60 years old, who had built the business from scratch and had no children or direct heirs. Stephen had always valued my work. I was punctual, responsible, took good care of the trucks, and had never had a serious accident in over 20 years of driving. One day in October 2007, Stephen called me into his office. Jane, he said, I have to tell you something important. I've been diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer, and the doctors give me a few months to live. The news hit me hard because Stephen had been like a father to me at work. I'm so sorry, Stephen. Is there anything I can do for you? Stephen got up from his desk and walked over to the window overlooking the yard where the trucks were parked. Jane, I've been thinking a lot about what will happen to the company when I'm gone. I have no family, no children, no one who can carry this on. He turned to me and looked me straight in the eye. I've decided to leave the company to you in my will. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Stephen, are you serious? Completely serious, Jane. You know this business better than anyone. You've worked with me for over 15 years. You know all the clients. You know how everything works. You're an honest and hardworking person. I can't think of anyone better to continue with Mediterranean Trucking. When I got home that night, I told Robert what had happened. Jane, are you sure you understood him correctly? Robert, Stephen explained it very clearly. He wants to leave the company to me in his will. He said that next week we're going to the lawyer's office to do all the paperwork. Robert was quiet for a few minutes. Jane, do you know how much that company is worth? That was a good question. Mediterranean Trucking had 12 trucks, its own industrial warehouse on the outskirts of Chicago, stable contracts with major companies, and a loyal client base that had been working with Stephen for years. Robert, honestly, I have no idea how much all that could be worth, but it must be a significant amount. The following week, Stephen and I went to the lawyer's office on LaSalle Street in Chicago. Mr. Martinez, who was the lawyer, read the will that Stephen had prepared. To my employee and friend Jane Miller, I leave in inheritance the entirety of my assets, which consist of the company Mediterranean Trucking, including the 12 vehicles, the industrial warehouse, the machinery, the commercial contracts, and the money deposited in the bank accounts. When the lawyer finished reading the valuation figures, Robert and I were in shock. The company was valued at $3,200,000. The bank accounts had $450,000. The annual profits of the business were approximately $280,000 net. In one afternoon, I had become a millionaire. Stephen died 3 months after the diagnosis, just before Christmas. It was a very sad moment because he had been like a second father to me, but it was also the moment I officially became the owner of Mediterranean Trucking. The first day I walked into the office as the owner, all the employees congratulated me. Miss Miller, they said, we know you'll continue the business just as well as Mr. Rogers did. The first few years after inheriting the company were a huge learning curve. I hired an administrator named Frank Green, who had worked with Stephen for many years and knew every aspect of the business. Miss Miller, Frank told me the first week, this company runs very well, but you have to stay on top of everything. The clients, the drivers, the truck maintenance, the invoices. Everything requires constant supervision. During those years, I continued to work as a driver, but now it was my own company. Robert continued to work at a clothing store downtown. To the outside world, we were still Jane and Robert, a working-class couple living modestly in our 3-bedroom apartment in Naperville. Why did I keep the secret all these years? At first, because I didn't want to change our way of life. Robert and I were happy living simply. We didn't need luxuries or showing off. Then, when Chris started working and building his own family, I didn't want him to think he had a rich mother who would solve all his problems. When Robert died of a heart attack 4 years ago, I seriously thought about telling Chris the truth. But right around that time, he was going through financial difficulties. He had just bought the house in Naperville with a very high mortgage. Pamela had reduced her work hours to take better care of the kids, and I could see they were under a lot of financial pressure. I didn't want Chris to know his mother had money because I was afraid it would change his attitude toward me. I wanted him to take care of me because he loved me, not because he expected some financial benefit. I wanted him to be independent, to build his own future without depending on his mother's inheritance. During these 4 years as a widow, I have continued to maintain the same standard of living. I collected my Social Security check, lived in my son's basement, wore simple, cheap clothes. But every month Frank deposited between $18,000 and $25,000 in profits from the company into my account, money that I saved without spending on anything special. On Fridays, when Chris came home from work, I watched how he treated me. At first, in the first few months after Robert's death, he seemed to genuinely care about me. But little by little, I started to notice changes. The comments about my situation became more frequent and harsher. Mom, don't you think you should find something to do during the day? Being at home all day isn't good for you, Chris would say. Mom, wouldn't it be better if you found a small apartment for yourself? You can't live in the basement forever, Pamela would say. Grandma, why don't you have a house like the other grandmas? The kids would ask. I always told them I was fine, that I didn't need more things, that I felt comfortable living with them. But slowly, I began to understand that they had decided I was poor and that I needed their charity and compassion. If you have also gone through something similar with your family, if they have also made you feel like you were a burden, I would like you to subscribe to this channel and tell me what city in America or what country you are listening from. Sometimes, other people's stories help us understand our own, and maybe your story also deserves to be told one day. After that horrible conversation on Friday, when Chris suggested I go to a nursing home, I made a decision. I wasn't going to tell them the truth about the company. I wasn't going to explain that I had enough money to buy 10 houses like theirs. I wasn't going to beg them to respect me. I was simply going to disappear from their lives and let them live with the consequences of their words. The day after that conversation, Saturday morning, I started putting my disappearance plan into motion. The first thing I did was call Frank, the company administrator. "Frank, I need to see you urgently. Can you come see me this Saturday?" "Of course, Miss Miller. Has something serious happened?" "Nothing serious, but I need to talk to you about some important changes." Frank arrived at Chris's house that same afternoon. He was a trustworthy man who had been working with me since I inherited the company. He knew all the details of the business and knew that I had kept my financial situation a secret. "Miss Miller, what do you need?" "Frank, I'm moving. I'm leaving Chicago and I need the company to run completely without me." "You're moving? Where to?" "That doesn't matter right now. The important thing is that you can manage everything without me having to be here physically." "Is that possible?" Frank thought for a moment. "Miss Miller, the company practically runs itself. I handle the drivers, the clients, the invoices, everything. You just have to sign some important papers from time to time and receive the profits." "Perfect. And if I need to sign something urgently, we can do it by mail, or you can come to wherever I am." Frank looked at me curiously. "Miss Miller, can I ask why you're leaving Chicago? Are you having problems with your family?" I explained the situation without going into too much detail. "My son has decided that I'm too old to live alone and wants to put me in a nursing home." Frank was dumbfounded. "Your son wants to put you in a home? Does he know about the company?" "He knows nothing, Frank. To him, I'm a poor retiree living on $800 a month. And you're not going to tell him?" "I'm never going to tell him. My son has shown me that he sees me as a burden. If he knew I had money, he would change his attitude, but not out of love, out of self-interest." Frank nodded. "I understand, Miss Miller. And what do you need me to do?" "I need you to find a way to keep sending me the profits wherever I am. I also need you to not say anything if my son comes asking for me. You don't know me." Frank smiled. "Miss Miller, after so many years working together, I think I've grown fond of you. If you want to disappear, I'll help you disappear." On Monday morning, I called a luxury real estate agency in Chicago to start looking for a house to move into. I didn't want to go too far from the company because I needed to be relatively close for any emergencies, but I also didn't want to stay in Chicago where Chris could easily find me. I thought about Florida, about Arizona, about California. Finally, I decided to look on the Gulf Coast of Florida, in some quiet coastal city where I could live like the rich woman I really was. "Good morning," I told the real estate agent. "I'm looking for a luxury house on the coast, budget of $800,000. The agent, a very professional young woman named Patricia, asked me several questions about the type of house I was looking for. "Do you prefer a house with a yard or an apartment? Do you want beachfront? Or do you not mind being a little further from the sea? How many bedrooms do you need?" I explained that I wanted a single-family house with a yard, a pool, a 2-car garage, and that it should be in a quiet but well-connected area. "I have several options that might interest you," Patricia said. "There's a beautiful house in Naples that I think you'll really like. It's 3,000 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, yard with a pool, ocean views, and it's in a very quiet community." She showed me the photos online, and the house seemed perfect. While I waited for the day to visit the house in Naples, I had to keep up appearances with Chris. He called me every day to ask if I had made any progress with the nursing home. "Mom, have you called Street Joseph's residence yet?" "Not yet, son. I'm thinking about it." "Mom, don't think so much. It's the best for everyone." I also got calls from Pamela. "Jane, how are you holding up? We know this must be difficult for you." "I'm fine, Pamela. I just need a little time to get used to the idea." "We're glad you see it that way. When you're in the home, we'll come visit you every week." One Thursday afternoon, Chris came down to the basement without warning. "Mom, how are you doing with the nursing home? 2 weeks of the deadline we gave you have already passed." "Chris, I've already made my decision." Chris smiled, thinking he had won. "And what's your decision?" "I'm leaving, but not to a nursing home." Chris's expression changed completely. "What do you mean, not to a nursing home? Where are you going?" "I'm going far away from Chicago, where nobody knows me and nobody judges me for how I live." Chris got nervous. "Mom, that's crazy. You can't go live alone in another city at your age." "Why can't I?" "Because you need care. Because you need us to be close in case something happens to you." Chris, in these 4 years since your father died, how many times have you come to take care of me when I've been sick? How many times have you been here when I really needed help? Chris fell silent because he knew I was right. Mom, but that's different. If you go to another city, we won't be able to come even if we wanted to. And when have you ever wanted to come without me asking? Mom, don't be unfair. We have our lives, our work, the kids have their activities. Exactly. You all have your lives, and I'm going to have mine. Chris got up from the bed where he had been sitting. And what if something happens to you? What if you have an accident? What if you get sick? Chris, if something happens to me, it will be my problem. I'm old enough to take care of myself. Mom, that's irresponsible. You're my mother and I have an obligation to take care of you. Now you have an obligation to take care of me? When have you fulfilled that obligation in the last few years? Chris turned red with anger. Mom, we've given you a roof over your head and food for 4 years. You've given me a damp basement and made me feel like a nuisance for 4 years. But it's impossible to live with you, Chris shouted. You're always here. We can't do anything in our own house without you being around. We can't have any privacy. The kids can't bring friends over because Grandma is always in the way. And then what I never thought could happen, happened. Chris came towards me. He grabbed my arm and pushed me towards the stairs. You stinky old lady. Get out of my house right now. I'm sick of having you here like a parasite. He pushed me so hard I almost fell down the stairs. We went up to the living room where Pamela and the kids were having dinner. What's going on? Pamela asked, alarmed. It's over, Chris yelled. It's over. This stinky old lady is getting out of my house right now. I never want to see her again. The kids just stared at the scene, not understanding what was happening. Chris, calm down, Pamela told him. You don't have to shout like that. I'm not going to calm down. I'm sick of this old woman who doesn't understand that she's not wanted here. He turned to me and pointed his finger. Pack your things and get out, and don't come back. I don't want to see you for the rest of my life. I stood there, paralyzed. My own son had called me a stinky old lady and had thrown me out of his house like a dog. Dylan and Abby started to cry. Dad, don't yell at Grandma, Abby said. Grandma, don't go, Dylan cried, but Chris was beside himself. Let her go. She'll see what real life is like when she has no one to support her. I went to the basement, packed my 2 suitcases, and walked to the front door. Before leaving, I turned to Chris. Son, you're going to regret this for the rest of your life. The only one who's going to regret it is you, when you see what it's like to live alone with no money. He yelled as he opened the door for me. Stinky old lady. I left the house with my 2 suitcases and walked to the bus stop. It was 9 o'clock on a Thursday night in April, and it was starting to rain. While I waited for the bus, I made the most important decision of the last few years. I wasn't just going to move far away from Chicago. I was going to do something that would change my life forever. I was going to live like the rich woman I really was. That night I went to a hotel near O'Hare Airport to think calmly about my next step. I couldn't sleep all night, replaying Chris's words over and over in my head. Stinky old lady. He had called me that. My own son had pushed me and thrown me out of his house as if I were trash. But while Chris thought he had left me on the street without resources, I knew I had a net worth of over $4 million and a monthly income of more than $20,000. For 16 years I had lived like a poor woman to avoid suspicion, but if my own son despised me, believing I was poor, it was time to stop pretending. The next morning I called Frank from the hotel. Frank, how much money do I have exactly right now, Miss Miller? Between the checking accounts, the fixed-term deposits, and the investments we've been making, you have approximately $1,800,000 in liquid assets, in addition to the value of the company, which is appraised at $2,400,000. And what are the current monthly profits? In the last 12 months, the average has been $22,000 net per month, Miss Miller, but now in high season, it can reach $28,000 some months. I fell silent, processing the numbers. $4,200,000 in total assets, $22,000 in monthly passive income. I was richer than my son could imagine in his wildest dreams. Frank, I want you to reserve the house in Naples we saw the other day. I'm going to buy it with cash. Cash, Miss Miller? That's $780,000. Cash, Frank. It's time I lived according to my real situation. Frank was silent for a moment. Miss Miller, I'm happy to hear you say that. For all these years I've watched you deprive yourself of things you could perfectly afford. I also want you to find me a new car, a high-end Mercedes or BMW. Budget of $80,000. Miss Miller, may I ask what happened to make you change your mind so radically? My son pushed me, called me a stinky old lady, and kicked me out of his house. I think it's time he knew who his mother really is. Frank was indignant. That's unbelievable. After everything you've done for him? Frank, my son knows nothing about what I've done for him. To him, I'm just a poor old woman who causes him problems. Are you going to tell him now? No. I'm going to disappear from his life, and he'll find out who his mother was when it's too late to change anything. Over the next week, Frank handled the purchase of the house and the search for the car. The house in Naples was spectacular. 3,000 square feet, yard with a pool, ocean views, double garage, 4 bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms, a fully equipped open-plan kitchen, and a 500 square foot terrace with panoramic views. Miss Miller, Frank told me when we went to see it, this house is a marvel. You're going to be very happy here. The price was $780,000, but by paying in cash, we got a $30,000 discount. It's perfect, I said as we toured all the rooms. I want to move in next week. He also found the perfect car for me. It was a new BMW X5, automatic, with navigation, automatic climate control, leather seats, a premium sound system, and all the safety and comfort options. It was at the dealership in Fort Myers for $75,000. Can we go see it tomorrow? I asked Frank. Of course, Miss Miller. I've scheduled an appointment with the salesman for 4 inches the afternoon. We went to the BMW dealership in Fort Myers the next day. The car was impressive. Black, metallic, beige leather interior with an elegant and modern design. The salesman, a man of about 40 named Ron, showed us all the vehicle's features. This model has a 265 horsepower diesel engine, 8-speed automatic transmission, all-wheel drive, satellite navigation system, 360-degree rear-view camera, parking sensors, and very comprehensive standard equipment. I really liked the car inside and out. I'll take it, I said after a 10-minute test drive. Ron was surprised by how quickly I decided. Don't you want to think about it? It's a major purchase. I don't need to think about it. I trust the BMW brand and I like the car. How will you be making the payment? Do you need financing? Cash, I replied. The $75,000 in cash. Ron almost fell out of his chair. Cash, Miss Miller? That's very unusual. Well, it's about time you start seeing unusual things with me, I said, smiling. Frank started to laugh. Miss Miller is right. It's time to do things in an uncommon way. The paperwork was done very quickly, and in 2 days, I had my new BMW ready to pick up. On Monday morning, Frank came to pick me up from the hotel to go sign the purchase of the house in Naples. We had arranged to meet with the real estate agency at the lawyer's office at 11 inches the morning. During the drive, I couldn't stop thinking about what I was doing. After 16 years of living modestly, I was about to spend almost $1 million in a single week. Miss Miller, Frank said as he drove, doesn't this radical change of life make you dizzy? On the contrary, Frank, it gives me a sense of freedom I've never felt before. For all these years, I've lived pretending to be someone I wasn't. And what are you going to do when your son finds out you've disappeared? My son is going to find out that his mother is no longer available for him to kick out and call a stinky old lady. Nothing more. We arrived at the lawyer's office in Naples at 11 o'clock sharp. Patricia, the real estate agent, was already there with the sellers, a German couple in their mid-52s who had used the house as a second home for 5 years. Good morning, Miss Miller, Patricia greeted me. Are you ready to become the owner of one of the most beautiful houses in Naples? The lawyer, an older gentleman named Mr. Antonio, read all the purchase documents. Miss Miller, the house has 3,000 square feet of living space, an 8,000 square foot lot, pool, garden, double garage, and is located in one of the best communities in Naples. The total price is $750,000. Do you agree? Completely agree, I replied. I signed all the papers without hesitation. When the lawyer handed me the keys, I felt a very special emotion. It was the first time in my life that I had a luxury house that truly reflected my real financial situation. Congratulations, Miss Miller, Patricia said. I think you're going to be very happy in this house. The German sellers came over to say goodbye. Miss Miller, the man said in English with a German accent. We have been very happy in this house for 5 years. We hope you will be too, his wife added. The house is very well maintained. The garden is in perfect condition, and the pool works perfectly. After signing at the lawyer's office, we went directly to the house so Frank could help me do the first walkthrough as the owner. I opened the front door with my own keys and entered my new home. It was an incredible feeling. Everything was mine. The spacious living room with sea views, the fully equipped open-plan kitchen, the 4 bedrooms, the 3 bathrooms, the pool, the garden. "Frank," I said while we were on the main terrace, "I want you to hire someone to clean the house thoroughly and prepare it perfectly for when I move in for good." "Of course, Miss Miller. And what should we do with the furniture?" "The house is sold furnished, but the furniture is a bit old. I want to change all the furniture. New sofas, new tables, new beds, all of the best quality. I don't want to skimp on expenses." Frank took out his notebook. "Any particular style?" "Modern but elegant. Leather sofas, glass and wood tables, comfortable beds, all with a current, high-quality design. And appliances? The best. Large TVs in the living room and bedrooms. Stereo system, American-style fridge, washer, dryer, dishwasher, microwave. Everything needed to live comfortably." Frank was taking notes of everything. "Miss Miller, this is going to cost quite a bit of money." "Frank, I have over $4 million. I think I can afford to furnish my house appropriately." That afternoon we went to the BMW dealership to pick up my new car. When Ron handed me the keys to the black BMW, I felt another wave of satisfaction. It was a beautiful car, comfortable, quiet, with a luxurious interior that smelled of new leather. "Miss Miller," Ron said, "congratulations on your purchase. This is one of the best cars we have. I did the first test drives around Naples. The car drove like a dream. The engine was powerful, but silent. The automatic transmission worked perfectly, and all the electronic systems responded flawlessly. When I arrived at my new house in Naples with the BMW, some neighbors in the community stared. It was obvious they were wondering who the new owner was who had arrived in such a car. I got out of the BMW, opened the door to my house with my keys, and entered my new home. It was the first day of my new life as the rich woman I really was. During the following days, while Frank was in charge of furnishing the house in Naples, I stayed at the Majestic Hotel in Naples, waiting for everything to be ready for me to move in permanently. It was a 5-star hotel with views of the marina, luxury rooms, and excellent service. For the first time in my life, I was living according to my real economic situation. Every morning I had breakfast on the hotel terrace looking at the sea, read the newspapers without rushing, and planned my day knowing that every minute belonged completely to me. It was a sense of freedom that I had never experienced. I didn't have to justify my expenses to anyone. I didn't have to pretend I didn't have money. I didn't have to put up with derogatory comments about my way of life. On Wednesday afternoon, Frank called me to tell me that the house was ready. "Miss Miller, I've finished furnishing the whole house. I've changed all the furniture. I've installed the new appliances. I've hired a professional cleaning company that has left everything perfect. Do you want to come and see it?" We went to the house that same afternoon, and I was impressed with the result. Frank had done an excellent job. He had chosen white Italian leather sofas, glass and stainless steel tables, beds with modern design headboards, and high-end mattresses. The appliances were from the best brands: 65-inch Samsung TVs, a Bose sound system, an LG American-style fridge, and a Bosch washer and dryer. "Frank, you've done an incredible job," I said as we walked through all the rooms. "This house looks like something out of a decoration magazine. Miss Miller, I'm glad you like it. I tried to create a modern yet cozy atmosphere. What do you think about moving in tomorrow?" "Perfect. Tomorrow morning I'll pick up my things from the hotel, and I'll officially move in." That night, my last night at the hotel, I reflected on everything that had changed in my life in just 2 weeks. I had gone from living in a damp basement, where my family treated me like a burden, to being the owner of a luxury mansion on the Gulf Coast. The next day I moved into my new house permanently. Frank helped me bring my few belongings from the hotel. It was strange to think that everything I owned fit into 2 suitcases, but it didn't matter anymore. Now I had a fully equipped house with everything I could possibly need. My first night in the Naples house was very special. I had dinner on the main terrace watching the sunset over the sea. It was a spectacular view. The coast stretched to the horizon, and the lights of the coastal towns began to turn on. The silence was only broken by the sound of the waves and the wind in the pine trees. "This is life," I thought, as I enjoyed a glass of red wine on my new terrace. For the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. There was no one yelling at me, no one calling me a stinky old lady, no one making me feel like I was in the way. It was simply Jane Miller, a 8-year-old woman enjoying her own house, bought with her own money. Over the next few days, I established a routine that made me feel completely renewed. I would get up at 8 inches the morning, have breakfast on the terrace looking at the sea, read the newspaper, take a walk through the community, have lunch at a restaurant in town, take a nap, and in the afternoon, I would go for a drive in the BMW. The reaction of the neighbors when they saw me with the BMW was very amusing. At first, they thought I was a rich tourist from Chicago who had rented the house for a vacation. When they found out I was the new owner, they began to treat me with a deference I had never experienced. "Good morning, Miss Miller." Linda, the woman who lived in the house next door, would greet me. "How are you today?" "Very well, Linda. This community is a marvel." "Miss Miller, if you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Here all the neighbors help each other. The difference in how they treated me compared to Chris's house was abysmal. Here, people saw me as an older lady with resources, someone respectable who had decided to retire to the coast. No one treated me like an old woman who caused problems or needed pity. 2 weeks after I moved, Frank came to visit me to check on how I was adjusting and to bring me the monthly company reports. "Miss Miller, you look very well. This change has done you a world of good." "Frank, you have no idea. For the first time in many years, I feel truly free." "And how are the expenses? Do you need more money?" "I'm fine for now. Between the savings I had and the monthly income from the company, I can live very comfortably." "How are the company's profits?" Frank opened his folder. "Miss Miller, this month we've had excellent profits. $26,500 net. The demand for freight transport is soaring. We have more clients than we can handle." "Perfect. Keep depositing the money into my checking account." "Miss Miller, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. Do you miss your son and your grandchildren?" The question made me reflect. I miss the grandchildren because they are not to blame for anything, but I haven't missed my son for a single day. And what if he truly regrets it? If he comes looking for you to apologize? "Frank, my son won't regret hurting me. He'll regret the consequences of hurting me, which is very different." During that visit, Frank told me something that worried me a bit. "Miss Miller, your son has called the company several times asking for you." "He called the company? How did he get the number?" "I don't know, Miss Miller, but he's called 4 times in the last few days." "And what did you tell him?" "What you asked me to tell him, that I don't know you and I've never heard of any Jane Miller." "Did he believe it?" "The first few times, yes, but the last time he was very insistent. He says he knows his mother has some connection to a transportation company and that he won't stop until he finds you." That worried me quite a bit. If Chris had gotten to the company, it meant he was investigating very thoroughly. "Frank, do you think he can get to Naples?" "It's difficult, Miss Miller. There's nothing that links your name to this house. You bought it through my company, and it's listed as a real estate investment." "Perfect, but stay alert in case he calls again." A week after Frank's visit, while I was having dinner on my terrace, my doorbell rang. It was very strange because I wasn't expecting anyone, and it was already 9 at night. I peeked through the window and saw a car I didn't recognize parked at the gate. It was a blue Ford Focus. I opened the door cautiously and came face to face with Chris. My son had managed to find me. He was there, at the door of my house, with a face that mixed surprise, confusion, and something like fear. "Mom? What is this? What are you doing in this house?" I stared at him for a few seconds before answering. "Hello, Chris. How did you find me?" "I hired a private investigator," he replied, without taking his eyes off the house. "But Mom, whose house is this? What are you doing here?" "It's my house, Chris. I live here." Chris's jaw dropped. "Your house? What do you mean your house? Where did you get the money for a house like this?" "Turns out, I'm not the poor woman you thought I was," I said with a calmness that surprised even myself. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean that when you called me a stinky old lady and kicked me out of your house, I already had more money than you will ever make in your entire life." Chris staggered as if he had been punched in the gut. "What are you saying? You have money? How much money?" "Enough to buy this $750,000 house in cash and that $75,000 BMW in cash," I said, pointing to my car parked in the garage. Chris turned to look at the BMW, then looked at me as if he couldn't process what he was seeing and hearing. Mom, this is impossible. You get $800 from Social Security. You don't have money, you. He trailed off, staring at the house, the garden, the pool, the car. You can't have all this. Chris just stood there at my door for several minutes, looking alternately at the mansion, the BMW, the pool, and me, as if he were seeing a hallucination. Mom, he said with a trembling voice, I need you to explain what's going on here. Where did you get the money for all this? Come in, I said, opening the door for him, but wipe your feet. This is my house, and I want it to stay clean. Chris entered slowly, looking at every detail of the interior. The Italian leather sofas, the glass tables, the giant televisions, the fully equipped open-plan kitchen. His eyes were popping out of his head. Mom, this looks like a palace, he murmured as he walked through the living room. How much did you pay for this house? $750,000, I replied. In cash. Chris sank into one of the sofas as if all his strength had left him. In cash. Mom, where did you get $750,000? I sat on the sofa opposite him and looked him straight in the eye. Chris, for the last 16 years, I have been the owner of a transportation company that my old boss left to me in his will. The company generates profits of over $250,000 a year, and my total net worth exceeds $4 million. Chris's mouth hung open for almost a full minute. $4 million? Are you serious? Completely serious. I'm a millionaire, Chris. I've been a millionaire for the last 16 years. But Mom, why did you never tell me? Why did you pretend to be poor? Because I wanted to know if you loved me for being your mother, or if you would only love me for my money. And now I have the answer. Chris got up from the sofa and began to pace the living room like a caged animal. Mom, if I had known you had money, I would have never treated you like that. I would have never kicked you out of the house. Exactly, Chris. If you had known I had money, you would have treated me like a queen. That proves that your respect for me depended on my bank account, not on me being your mother. Chris stopped in front of me. Mom, that's not fair. It's normal for children to worry when they think their parents don't have resources. Chris, worrying is one thing. Kicking me out and calling me a stinky old lady is something else entirely. Chris put his hands on his head. Mom, I regret that. I lost my temper. I said things I shouldn't have said. Words can't be erased, Chris. Once you called me a stinky old lady, those words were etched forever. But Mom, people make mistakes. People ask for forgiveness. I'm asking for forgiveness now. I got up from the sofa and walked over to the window that looked out onto the garden. Chris, there are mistakes that don't deserve forgiveness. When a child disrespects their parent the way you disrespected me, that is not forgiven. Chris approached me. Mom, please, I'm your only son. We're family. You decided I wasn't your family when you threw me out of your house. Mom, I was stressed. I had money problems, problems at work, problems with Pamela. It was nothing personal against you. Chris, do you know what the saddest part of all this is? What? That for 4 years, I lived in your basement pretending to be poor, putting up with derogatory comments, feeling like I was treated as a burden, when in reality I had enough money to buy 100 houses like yours. Chris was silent for a moment. Mom, if you had told me the truth from the beginning, everything would have been different. No, Chris, if I had told you the truth from the beginning, you would have treated me well for my money, not for being your mother. I'd rather you hate me for being rich than love me for pretending to be poor. Mom, I don't hate you. I love you. You're my mother. Chris, when you called me a stinky old lady, you showed what you really think of me. Chris started to cry. Mom, I regret that every day. I can't sleep at night thinking about what I said to you. Do you regret hurting me? Or do you regret the consequences of hurting me? Chris fell silent because he knew I was right. Mom, I regret both. No, Chris, you regret the consequences. If I were really poor like you thought, you wouldn't be here asking for forgiveness. Chris wiped his tears and looked at me with an expression of desperation. Mom, what can I do to make you forgive me? Nothing, Chris. Absolutely nothing. There has to be something. You can't hate me forever. I don't hate you, Chris. I simply no longer consider you my son. That's horrible. You can't say that. I can say whatever I want. It's my house, bought with my money, and you are no longer a part of my life. Chris approached me with a pleading attitude. Mom, think about the children. Dylan and Abby miss you. They ask about you every day. The children are not to blame for anything, but I can't maintain a relationship with them without having to put up with you. Mom, I promise not to bother you. If you want, I can bring the kids to see you, and I'll wait in the car. Chris, you already showed me how you keep your promises. You promised me respect for 42 years, and in the end, you kicked me out. Chris became even more desperate. Mom, you have to give me a chance. I'm your blood, your only son. My only son showed me that he despises me. Now I'll show him that I don't need him. Chris fell silent for a few minutes, looking out the window towards the garden and the pool. Mom, can I ask you something? Go ahead. How much money do you have exactly? Why do you want to know? Because I need to understand the magnitude of my mistake. I have a net worth of over $4 million and a monthly income of over $20,000. Chris sank back into the sofa. My God, Mom, I'm an idiot. I'm a complete idiot. Indeed, Chris, you are an idiot. You threw the richest woman you know out of your house. Mom, if I had known. If you had known, you would have treated me well out of self-interest, not out of love. I'd rather you despise me for being rich than love me for pretending to be poor. Chris stood up again and started pacing the living room. Mom, this changes everything. This changes absolutely everything. It changes nothing, Chris. You showed me who you really are, and I've taken note. But Mom, now we can have a different relationship. Now I can respect you as you deserve. Now you can respect me, and you couldn't respect me before without knowing how much money I had? Chris fell silent, because he knew he had no answer to that question. Mom, I admit I was wrong. I admit I was a bad son, but give me a chance to make it up to you. Chris, I don't want you to make anything up to me. I want you to leave my house and never come back. Mom, that's impossible. You can't cut off the relationship with me forever. I can do whatever I want. I'm 68 years old. I have $4 million, and I no longer need to put up with disrespect from anyone. Chris approached me with a panicked expression. Mom, if you cut off the relationship with me, what will happen to the inheritance? That confirmed what I already knew. The inheritance, Chris? Is that your concern? No, Mom, my concern is you, but I also have to think about my children's future. Your children will have the future that you can give them with your work. Don't count on me. What do you mean? I mean, I've already made a will and you're not in it. Chris turned as white as a sheet. You've made a will? And who are you leaving the money to? To charitable organizations that help elderly people who have been mistreated by their families. My money will go to help old people whose children have thrown them out of the house, calling them stinky. Chris staggered and had to lean against the wall. Mom, you can't do that. I'm your only legal heir. I can do whatever I want with my money. It's mine, and I decide who I leave it to. Mom, this is crazy. You can't disinherit your own son. I can and I have. The will expressly states that I am disinheriting you for having disrespected me in a grievous manner. Chris started crying again. Mom, you're ruining my life. My wife is going to leave me. My kids will never forgive me. My future is destroyed. You destroyed your own future when you decided to kick me out of your house. Mom, you have to understand that I made a mistake. I understand perfectly that you made a mistake. What you need to understand is that some mistakes have no solution. Chris approached me and knelt down. Mom, I'm begging you. Give me a chance. I'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you. Get up, Chris. I don't like seeing you on your knees. Chris stood up but maintained a pleading attitude. Mom, tell me what I have to do for you to forgive me. I've already told you. Nothing. There is nothing you can do. There must be something. Surely we can find a solution. The only solution would have been not to kick me out of your house, but that can't be fixed now. Chris became even more desperate. Mom, you can't be so hard on me. I'm your son, your only family. My family now are the people who respect me. You are no longer part of that family. Chris stayed at my house for more than 2 hours trying to convince me to give him a second chance. He tried everything. Tears, pleas, promises, emotional blackmail, but I stood firm in my decision. In the end, when he realized he wasn't going to get anywhere, his attitude changed radically. All right, Mom, he said as he headed for the door. If that's your final decision, I respect it. But I want you to know that this isn't over. What do you mean by that, Chris? I mean, I'm going to fight for my rights as a son. I'm going to contest that will. Chris, you can contest whatever you want. The will was drawn up by a lawyer and has specific clauses for cases like yours. What clauses? Clauses that say if anyone contests the will without just cause, they automatically lose any right to the inheritance, even the statutory share. Chris was silent for a few seconds. Mom, I'm also going to investigate how you got all this money. Maybe it's not as legal as it seems. That threat made me very angry. Chris, all my money is completely legal. I've paid all my taxes, I have all the papers in order, and I don't owe anything to anyone. We'll see about that, he said with a malicious smile. I'm also going to hire a lawyer to see if you can be declared incompetent to manage your money. At your age, with so much money, maybe you're not in a position to make important decisions. Chris, if you try to declare me incompetent, I will sue you for harassment, and you will have very serious problems. Mom, I just want to protect you. A 6-8-year-old woman with so much money can be a victim of scammers or make wrong decisions. The only scammer I see here is you, trying to get your hands on money you don't deserve. Chris opened the door to leave. Mom, this isn't over. I'm going to fight for what's rightfully mine as a son. Chris, what's rightfully yours as a son, you already gave yourself. Nothing. When you threw me out of your house, you gave up all your rights. We'll see, he said before leaving. We'll see. I watched him drive away in his Ford Focus and close the door of my house with a sense of relief. It had been a very tough conversation, but I had made it clear that I was not going to change my decision for anything in the world. The next day I called my lawyer, a man named Anthony Ruiz, who had helped me with all the legal issues of the company for the last few years. Miss Miller, what can I do for you? Anthony, my son has threatened to contest my will and to try to have me declared incompetent. I need to protect myself legally. Miss Miller, tell me exactly what happened. I explained the whole situation, the inheritance of the company, the secret I had kept for years, the humiliation from Chris, my disappearance, and yesterday's visit. Anthony listened to me attentively without interrupting. Miss Miller, legally you are in a very strong position. Your will is completely valid, your assets are legal, and there is no reason to declare you incompetent. But can he try? He can try, but he would have to prove to a judge that you are not of sound mind, and seeing how you live and how you manage yourself, that would be impossible. What can we do to strengthen my position? We can do several things. First, I'm going to ask a forensic doctor to do a complete evaluation to certify that you are perfectly capable. Second, we are going to review the will to make sure that all the clauses are perfectly worded. Do whatever is necessary. Miss Miller, I also recommend that you document everything that has happened with your son. If he tries to cause problems, we need to have proof of his behavior. What kind of proof? Witness testimonies, recordings if possible, any evidence that shows he has disrespected you. Over the next few weeks, I underwent all the medical evaluations that Anthony deemed necessary. A forensic doctor gave me a thorough examination, blood tests, an electrocardiogram, a brain scan, tests for memory, coordination, and reasoning. The results were excellent, Miss Miller, the doctor told me when we received all the results. You are in excellent physical and mental health for your age. There are no signs of dementia, cognitive decline, memory problems, or any other condition that could affect your ability to make decisions. With these medical reports, Anthony prepared a complete dossier that proved my full legal capacity. Miss Miller, with these documents, any attempt by your son to question your capacity will be immediately rejected by any judge. Meanwhile, Chris did not stay idle. Over the following weeks, I received several unexpected visits. First came Pamela, my daughter-in-law, with a very different attitude than she had when I lived in her house. Jane, she said with a forced smile, how are you? This house is beautiful. Hello, Pamela. What's up? Jane, I came because I'm very worried about Chris. Ever since he came to see you, he's been very depressed. He's not eating, not sleeping, not talking to anyone. Pamela, that's not my problem. Jane, Chris told me about the money and the company. I understand you're angry with him, but don't you think you're being too harsh? Pamela, did you agree when Chris threw me out of your house? Pamela fell silent. Jane, we thought it was for the best for everyone. For everyone, or for you two. For everyone, Jane. You were going to be better off in a home too. Pamela, you wanted me to go to a home because my presence in the house bothered you. Now that you know I have money, you want me to be part of the family again. Don't you think that's a bit hypocritical? Pamela got nervous. Jane, sometimes things look different when you have more information. Exactly, Pamela. When you thought I was poor, you threw me out. Now that you know I'm rich, you want me. That tells me everything I need to know about you. Jane, it's not a matter of money. It's a matter of family. To me, Family is people who respect you whether you have money or not. You are not my family. A week later, Dylan and Abby, my grandchildren, came. Seeing them moved me very much because I had missed them, but it also hurt me because I knew that Chris was using them to manipulate me emotionally. "Grandma," Dylan said, "why do you have such a big house? Don't you live with us anymore?" "Dylan, Grandma doesn't live with you anymore because your father decided he didn't want me in the house." "But why, Grandma? What did you do wrong?" Abby hugged me. "Grandma, I've missed you. Why don't you come home?" "Honey, Grandma can't come back home because your father doesn't want me to. But Grandma, can you come visit us?" "Dylan, I would love to visit you, but your father and I have had very serious problems." "What problems, Grandma? They're grown-up problems, honey. You don't have to worry about them." Abby climbed onto my lap. "Grandma, do you have a lot of money?" "Why do you ask that, honey? Because Dad says you're very rich and that's why you have this nice house." "Yes, Abby, Grandma has enough money to live comfortably. And why didn't you give us money when you lived with us?" It was an innocent question, but one that made me think a lot. "Abby, money isn't the most important thing in life. The most important thing is that people love you for who you are, not for what you have." "But does Dad love you, Grandma?" "I don't know, honey. You'll have to ask him that. I was with the children for 2 hours. We played in the garden, they swam in the pool, and I showed them the whole house. It was clear that they were impressed by the standard of living I had, but it was also clear that they didn't understand why there were problems between their father and me. When it was time to go, Dylan asked me a question that broke my heart. "Grandma, when are you coming back home with us?" "Dylan, Grandma isn't coming back home with you anymore. Never, never." "But can we come visit you?" "When you're older, you can come visit me as many times as you want." "When we're older?" "When will that be?" "When you're 18. Abby started to cry. "But that's a long time." "I know, honey, but sometimes things are just that way." Dylan also got emotional. "Grandma, is it our fault?" "No, Dylan, it's not your fault. It's your father's fault." After the children left, I was very sad. It was the most painful part of this whole situation. Dylan and Abby were not to blame for anything, but I couldn't maintain a normal relationship with them while Chris continued to try to manipulate me through them. 2 months after Chris's visit to my house, my new life in Naples had completely stabilized. I had established routines that brought me a constant happiness I hadn't known in decades. I woke up every morning without the anxiety of facing derogatory comments or situations that made me feel like a burden. During this time, I had made friends in the community. Linda, my next-door neighbor, had introduced me to other residents. Michael, a retiree from Chicago who had been an architect. Sarah, a woman from Savannah who had owned an antique shop. Daniel, a man from Valencia who had worked in real estate. "Jane," Michael said one afternoon while we were having coffee on the terrace of the community's social club, "you've been here for 2 months, and you seem like a different person. At first you seemed worried, but now you radiate tranquility." "It's because I've found my place in the world," I replied. "A place where no one judges me, no one criticizes me, no one makes me feel like I'm in the way." Sarah, who was very direct, added, "What you've done is regain your self-esteem. For years you put up with being treated badly, and now you've remembered that you deserve respect." "Exactly. And I've learned that it's better to be alone than in bad company, even if that bad company is your own family." The company's profits continued to arrive punctually every month. Frank visited me regularly to keep me informed about the business and also to make sure that Chris wasn't causing problems. "Miss Miller," he said during one of his visits, "this quarter we've broken all records, $78,000 in profits in 3 months. And do you know anything about Chris? He has called the company again several times, but I have continued to tell him that I don't know him. I've also heard rumors that he is asking questions around Chicago about transportation companies related to the name Jane Miller. Do you think he can reach us?" "It's unlikely, Miss Miller. The company is registered in my name, and there are no documents that directly link you to it. He would have to be very persistent and very lucky. Stay alert anyway." One afternoon while I was reading on my terrace, I received a call from an unknown number. "Jane Miller?" "Yes, this is she. I'm Helen, Pamela's sister. Can I talk to you for a moment?" Helen was Chris's sister-in-law, a woman of about 38, who had always treated me well when I lived at my son's house. "Hello, Helen. How are you?" "Very worried, Jane. Pamela told me the whole situation, and I wanted to talk to you. And what do you want to tell me?" "Jane, Chris is doing very badly. He lost his job because he can't concentrate. Pamela is desperate because she doesn't know what to do with him. Helen, that's not my problem. Jane, I know Chris treated you very badly, but he is truly devastated. And you expect me to feel sorry for him? No, Jane. I just hope you understand that people sometimes make mistakes and deserve a second chance. Helen, there are mistakes that don't deserve second chances. Kicking your mother out of the house and calling her a stinky old lady is one of those mistakes. Helen was quiet for a few seconds. Jane, the children ask about you constantly. That sentence hurt me more than I expected. And what do you tell them? We tell them that Grandma is angry with Dad and that she needs time to forgive him. And what do they say? Dylan says that if Dad did something wrong, he has to apologize to Grandma. Abby says she wants to go find you, to give you a hug and fix everything. Hearing that, my eyes filled with tears. Helen, I love my grandchildren very much, but I can't maintain a relationship with them if it means having to put up with their father. And what if Chris promises not to bother you, if he just wants you to keep in touch with the children? Helen, Chris already showed me how he keeps his promises. He promised me respect for 42 years, and in the end, he kicked me out. Jane, don't you think he deserves to know how you're living now? Pamela says you have an incredible house and a very expensive car, and what does that matter? It matters because Chris feels guilty for having misjudged you. If he had known you had money, he would never have suggested you go to a nursing home. Exactly, Helen. If he had known I had money, he would have treated me well. That proves that his respect for me depended on my bank account. Helen realized she wasn't going to convince me. Jane, is there any message you want me to give to Chris? Yes. Tell him his mother is living like a queen, that she has a beautiful house on the coast, that she has a luxury BMW, that she eats at the best restaurants, and that she is happier now than in the last 10 years. After hanging up with Helen, I decided to take additional measures to protect my privacy. It was clear that Chris was not going to stop looking for me and sending intermediaries to try to locate me. I called Anthony, my lawyer, to ask for advice on how to completely shield my new life. Miss Miller, Anthony told me, we can take several measures to ensure that no one can bother you. We can change your tax domicile to a postal address, create more companies to manage your assets, and even request special data protection. What does special data protection mean? It means that your personal data will not appear in any public registry. Only judicial authorities could access them with a very specific court order. Perfect. Do whatever is necessary. Over the next few weeks, Anthony took care of completely reorganizing my legal situation. He created 3 different companies: Mediterranean Coast Investments LLC, Florida Real Estate LLC, and Naples Management LLC, which became the official owners of my house, my car, and my investments. He also managed the change of tax domicile and data protection. Miss Miller, he explained when he finished all the paperwork, now it is practically impossible for anyone to locate you through official records. One Saturday afternoon, while I was shopping at the mall in Naples, a woman approached me. Are you Jane Miller? She was a woman of about 45 whom I did not know. Yes, I am. Do we know each other? No, but I think you are Chris Miller's mother. My blood ran cold. Who are you? I'm a colleague of Pamela's. I came down from Chicago to spend the weekend on the coast, and Pamela asked me that if I happened to see you, I should try to talk to you. And what do you want to tell me? The woman looked around to make sure there weren't many people listening. Jane, Chris is doing very badly. He lost his job and can't find another because he's very depressed. Pamela is desperate because she doesn't know how to help him. That's not my problem. Jane, I know Chris treated you very badly, but he is truly devastated. He's lost 40 pounds. He doesn't sleep. He barely talks. And you expect me to feel sorry for him? No, Jane. We just hope you understand that when people realize they've made a terrible mistake, they deserve a chance to fix it. There are mistakes that can't be fixed. Kicking your mother out of the house and calling her a stinky old lady is one of those mistakes. The woman was silent for a few seconds. Jane, the children are suffering a lot. They don't understand why Grandma doesn't want to see them. The children are not to blame for anything, but I can't allow Chris to use them to emotionally manipulate me. Is there nothing Chris can do to fix this? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Jane, can I ask you something? Pamela says you live very well now. How can you afford it? It turns out I'm not the poor woman your family thought I was. What do you mean? I mean, Chris judged me without knowing the whole truth about my financial situation. Are you rich? I'm much richer than Chris can imagine. The woman was dumbfounded. Jane, if Chris had known that, he would have never treated you like that. Exactly. If he had known I have money, he would have treated me like a queen. That proves his respect for me depended on my bank account, not on me being his mother. Jane, that's very harsh. Life is harsh, and sometimes the decisions we make have consequences that last forever. After this chance encounter, I realized that Chris was using everyone he knew to try to pressure me. It was clear that he wasn't going to stop, but I was determined to stand my ground. 6 months after moving to Naples, my life had acquired a stability and happiness that I hadn't known in decades. Every day that passed, I felt more convinced that I had made the right decision. The daily routine gave me a sense of absolute freedom. Waking up when I wanted, having a leisurely breakfast on the terrace, reading the newspaper without rushing, taking walks on the beach, having dinner, watching the sunset over the sea. The company's income continued to grow. Frank had secured new contracts with French and Italian companies, which had significantly increased profits. "Miss Miller," he said during his monthly visit, "this year we are going to exceed all records. I estimate that your annual profits will be close to $320,000. Frank, do you know what the best part of all this money is?" I asked him. "Tell me, Miss Miller." "That now I know I can live exactly as I want, without depending on anyone or putting up with disrespect from anyone." "And what are you going to do with so much money?" "Live well, help who I see fit, and above all, have the peace of mind of knowing that no one can emotionally blackmail me because I need their help." During those months, I had established a very pleasant social routine. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I played tennis at the sports club in Naples with Michael, my architect neighbor. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I went for walks on the beach with a group of retirees from the area. On Saturdays, I usually went to a luxury restaurant in Naples, and on Sundays, I dedicated myself to resting and reading at home. "Jane," Michael told me one afternoon after tennis, "you seem like a different person since you arrived here. At first, you seemed angry and hurt, but now you radiate peace." "It's because I've found my place in the world," I replied. "A place where no one judges me, no one criticizes me, no one makes me feel like I'm a bother." Daniel, my friend from Valencia who was very direct, added, "What you've done is regain your dignity. For years you put up with being treated badly, and now you've remembered that you deserve respect." "Exactly. And I've learned that it's better to be alone than in bad company, even if that bad company is your own family." One Thursday evening, while I was having dinner at a restaurant in Fort Myers, I received a call from Frank. "Miss Miller, I have to tell you something urgent." "What happened?" "Your son has hired a detective agency to investigate all your financial movements. They came to the company with a court order to review some documents." "A court order? How did he get that?" "It seems he has filed a complaint that you may be the victim of a scam, or that there may be problems with the origin of the money. The judge has authorized a superficial investigation." That worried me a lot. "Frank, is there any problem with our papers?" "None, Miss Miller. Everything is in order. The contracts, the invoices, the taxes, everything. But your son is being very persistent." "What have the detectives found?" "Nothing important. They've seen that you are the owner of the company, that the profits are legal, and that everything is correctly documented. But have they gotten any information about where I live?" "No, Miss Miller. The address that appears in the company documents is still the one in Chicago. There's nothing that leads them to Naples." "Perfect. Stay alert in case they come back." The next day, I called Anthony, my lawyer, to tell him what had happened. "Miss Miller, this is very serious. Your son is using the courts to harass you. What can we do?" "We can file a lawsuit for judicial harassment. Your son is using legal resources abusively to try to locate and pressure you." "Can that stop him?" "It can, but it can also make things worse. If we file a lawsuit, he can counterattack with more complaints." "Anthony, I just want to be left in peace." "I understand, Miss Miller. We are going to prepare a defensive strategy. If he continues to harass you, we will respond forcefully." That same week, I received another unexpected visit. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was sunbathing in my garden when the doorbell rang. I peeked through the window and saw an official car parked at the gate. It was an official from the court in Chicago with a judicial summons. "Miss Jane Miller?" "Yes, that's me. I have a summons from the Court of First Instance Number 12 of Chicago. Your son, Chris Miller, has requested an evaluation of your mental capacity to manage your assets." I was frozen. Chris had followed through on his threat. I immediately called Anthony. "Miss Miller, don't worry. This is exactly what we expected. Your son is desperate and is using all the legal weapons at his disposal. What do I have to do? You have to present yourself in Chicago for the evaluation, but we are going to go completely prepared. What does a mental capacity evaluation mean? It means that a team of psychologists and forensic doctors will evaluate whether you are in a condition to make important decisions about your money. But since we already have all the medical reports we need, this is going to be very easy to overcome. And if Chris manages to have me declared incompetent? Miss Miller, that's impossible. You are in perfect mental state. You have all the medical reports that confirm it, and you have shown that you manage your money very well. No judge is going to declare you incompetent. 2 weeks later, I traveled to Chicago with Anthony to attend the evaluation. It was very strange to return to the city where I had lived all my life, but where I no longer had a home or family. We stayed at the Villarreal Hotel near the Art Institute, and that night before the evaluation, Anthony gave me the last instructions. Miss Miller, tomorrow the psychologists are going to ask you many questions about your life, your decisions, your money. Answer calmly, be coherent, and show that you know perfectly well what you are doing with your life. Anthony, what if Chris is present at the evaluation? He may be present, but he cannot interfere. He is only an observer. I don't know if I'll be able to keep my calm if I see him. Miss Miller, you have to keep your calm. Your behavior during the evaluation is very important. If you get upset or aggressive, it could harm you. The evaluation took place at the courthouse at 10 inches the morning. When we arrived, Chris was already there with his lawyer, a man of about 50 with a very serious look. Chris stared at me when I entered, but he didn't greet me. I didn't greet him either. The evaluation team consisted of 2 psychologists, a forensic doctor, and a social worker. Dr. Martinez, who led the team, explained the procedure. Miss Miller, we are going to ask you a series of questions and tests to evaluate your mental state and your ability to make decisions. For the next 3 hours, they subjected me to a full battery of tests. They asked me about my personal history, my financial situation, my recent decisions, my future plans. They also gave me tests of memory, calculation, logical reasoning, and comprehension. Miss Miller, Doctor, Martinez asked me, can you explain to us why you decided to buy a $750,000 house? Because I have enough money to afford it, and because I wanted to live comfortably. Do you consider that a reasonable decision? Completely reasonable. I have a net worth of over $4 million and a monthly income of over $20,000. And why did you decide to distance yourself from your family? Because my son kicked me out of his house and called me a stinky old lady. I decided I didn't want to continue putting up with that kind of treatment. Throughout the evaluation, Chris was taking notes and talking in a low voice with his lawyer. At the end of the evaluation, Dr. Martinez asked me the most important question. Miss Miller, your son alleges that you may have made important decisions under the influence of third parties who want to take advantage of your money. What is your opinion on that? Doctor, all my decisions I have made on my own, with full awareness, and after thinking them through a lot. No one has influenced me, no one has pressured me, and no one is taking advantage of me. My son is upset because he has realized that he threw a millionaire mother out of his house, but that doesn't mean I'm incapacitated. 2 weeks later, we received the evaluation report. Anthony called me to give me the news. Miss Miller, I have the report. It is completely favorable to you. What does it say exactly? It says that you are in perfect mental state, that you have full capacity to make decisions, that you manage your money responsibly, and that there are no signs of external influence or manipulation. And what happens now? Now the judge has to make a decision, but with this report it is impossible for him to declare you incompetent. And can Chris appeal? He can, but it would be very difficult for him to achieve anything. This report is definitive. A week later, Anthony called me with the court's decision. Miss Miller, the judge has completely dismissed your son's petition. He has ruled that you are in full mental capacity and that there are no grounds to limit your freedom to manage your assets. And is that final? Completely final. Furthermore, the judge has warned your son that if he files unfounded lawsuits again, he may be sanctioned for abuse of the judicial system. Perfect. Does that mean he can't bother me anymore? Legally, he can't do anything else. If he continues to harass you, we can report him for stalking and harassment. That news reassured me a lot. After months of legal tension, I finally had official confirmation that Chris could do nothing to take my money or limit my freedom. A month after the court ruling, while I was having dinner on my favorite terrace watching the sunset over the sea, I reflected on everything that had happened in the last 8 months. It had been an intense period, full of confrontations and tensions, but it had also been the period in which I had completely regained my dignity and my freedom. Chris had used all the legal weapons at his disposal to try to control me or regain access to my money, but he had failed in everything. The courts had confirmed that I was in full mental capacity, that my money was completely legal, and that I had the right to spend it as I wished. During this time, my life in Naples had remained peaceful and satisfying. The friends from the tennis club had become my true family. Michael had taught me to play golf. Daniel had introduced me to a group of retired investors who met to talk about finances. Sarah had introduced me to a book club where we discussed classic American novels. Jane, Michael told me one afternoon after playing golf, "You've been here for 8 months now, and you're like a completely different person. At first, you were a hurt and angry woman. Now you are a woman at peace. It's because I've learned something very important, Michael." "What have you learned?" "I've learned that family isn't just about blood. True family are the people who love you, respect you, and make you feel good. You all are more family to me than my own son." Sarah, who had been listening, added, "It's the great lesson of life, Jane. You can choose your family, and it's better to have a chosen family that makes you happy than a blood family that makes you suffer." A year after moving to Naples, my new life had completely consolidated. The daily routine provided me with a constant happiness that I had not known in decades. I woke up every morning without the anxiety of receiving unpleasant calls or visits that made me feel like a burden. Every day was an opportunity to enjoy the freedom I had earned with my decision. The company's income had continued to grow thanks to Frank's excellent management. "Miss Miller," he told me during his monthly visit, "this year we are going to exceed all expectations. Your profits will be close to $340,000 annually." "Frank, do you know what is most satisfying about all this?" I asked him. "Tell me, Miss Miller." "That my son threw me out of his life, believing I was a poor old woman who gave him problems, and it turns out I was richer than he could ever imagine." "Have you never been tempted to tell him?" "Never. Let him live with the guilt of having thrown out his poor mother. If he knew the truth, he would feel worse, but for the wrong reasons." During that time, I had perfected my lifestyle in Naples. I had bought a small boat to go fishing on the weekends. I had also hired a woman from the town, Dolores, to help me with the house cleaning 3 times a week, and I had started to travel occasionally. A weekend in Lisbon, a few days in Paris, a week in the Canary Islands. "Jane," Daniel told me one afternoon at the golf club, "you have the life we would all like to have. Money, health, freedom, and the peace of not having to put up with anyone who makes you suffer." "The most important thing," I replied, "is that I have recovered my dignity. For years I put up with derogatory comments, visits where I felt like a nuisance, situations where they made me feel that I was a burden. Now no one treats me like that." Michael, who was always very direct, added, "What you have done is realize your own worth. Many older people put up with humiliations because they believe they have no other choice, but you have shown that there are options. The difference is that I had the financial resources to choose. Many elderly people do not have that luck. One afternoon while I was reading on my terrace, I received a call from a number I did not know. "Jane Miller?" "Yes, this is she." "I'm Linda, Robert's sister, your late husband. Do you remember me?" Of course I remembered Linda. She was my late husband's older sister, a woman of about 72 who lived in Savannah. "Hello, Linda. What a surprise. How are you?" "Very well, Jane. I'm calling because I found out what happened with Chris." "Who told you?" "Pamela called me a few days ago. She is very worried about the whole situation." Linda had always maintained a good relationship with our family, although after Robert's death we had lost touch. "Jane, Pamela told me that Chris behaved very badly with you. He behaved in an unforgivable way, Linda. Is it true that he threw you out of his house?" "It's true. He kicked me out and called me a stinky old lady." Linda was quiet for a few seconds. "Jane, that's terrible. I would have never imagined that Chris could do something like that. I wouldn't have imagined it either, but he did." "Jane, where are you now? Pamela says you have a very good house." "I'm in Naples, in a house facing the sea." "In Naples? How can you afford that?" "Linda, it turns out that I'm not the poor woman that Chris thought I was. I told her the whole story of the inheritance of the company, of the secret that I had kept for years, of the profits that I had been generating all this time. Linda couldn't believe it. "Jane, are you telling me that you are a millionaire?" "Exactly. I have a net worth of over $5 million. My God. And Chris didn't know. He knew nothing. To him, I was a poor retiree who lived on $800 a month." "Jane, if Chris had known that, he would have never treated you like that." "Exactly, Linda. If he had known that I have money, he would have treated me like a king. That shows that his respect for me depended on my bank account." Linda sighed. "Jane, I understand that you are very hurt, but don't you think that Chris may have learned his lesson?" "Linda, there are lessons that are learned too late, and this is one of them." "Jane, the children miss you very much." "I miss them too, but I can't maintain a relationship with them without having to put up with their father. And if Chris promises not to bother you, if he only wants you to maintain contact with the children?" "Linda, Chris already showed me how he keeps his commitments. Jane, is there nothing I can do to fix this situation?" "Nothing, Linda. Absolutely nothing." "Jane, and if I tell you how Chris is really doing now? I'm not interested in how Chris is doing." "Jane, he has lost 3 jobs in a row because he can't concentrate. Pamela says that he barely eats, that he doesn't sleep, that he cries constantly. He has lost more than 50 pounds. "Linda, that's his problem. He made the decision to kick me out, and now he has to live with the consequences." "Jane, but he's your only son." "My only son showed me that he despises me. Now I show him that I don't need him." Linda made one last attempt. "Jane, Robert wouldn't have wanted things to end like this. Linda, Robert also wouldn't have tolerated his son kicking me out of the house. If he were alive, he would have been the first to defend me. Jane, is there anything that Chris can do for you to forgive him?" "Yes, Linda. He can invent a time machine, go back to the past, and not kick me out." "Jane, that's impossible." "Exactly. It's impossible. That's why there is no possible forgiveness." Linda realized that she was not going to convince me. "Jane, can I ask you something personal? Tell me, are you happy with the life you have now?" "Linda, I am happier now than in the last 15 years. I have a beautiful house, friends who respect me, enough money to live like a queen, and the peace of mind of not having to put up with humiliations from anyone. Don't you miss having a family?" "I miss having the family I thought I had. But I don't miss the family I really had." After hanging up with Linda, I kept thinking about the conversation. It was clear that the entire extended family was aware of the situation and that they would probably continue to try to mediate. But my decision was firm and irrevocable. That night, while I was having dinner on my favorite terrace watching the sunset over the sea, I reflected on the year I had been in Naples. It had been the fullest and most satisfying period of my adult life. Not just because of the money or the comfort, but because of something much more important: the recovery of my self-esteem and my dignity. For decades I had put up with derogatory comments, uncomfortable situations, and a treatment that made me feel like a burden. I had normalized the lack of respect because I believed it was the price I had to pay to maintain contact with my family. But now I knew I was wrong. The money had given me the freedom to choose, but the real transformation had been emotional. I had learned that I deserved respect, that my company had value, that I did not have to apologize for existing. I had learned that it is better to be alone with dignity than accompanied with humiliations. A week after Linda's call, I received a certified letter at my post office box in Naples. It was from Chris. The letter said, "Mom, I know you don't want to know anything about me, but I need to tell you something important. I've lost my job again. Pamela told me she wants to separate because she can't stand living with someone so broken. The kids ask about you constantly, and I don't know what to tell them. I sold the car to pay some debts, and I will probably have to sell the house too. My life is completely ruined because of what I did to you. Before everything falls apart completely, I wanted to apologize one more time and tell you that I regret every day of my life for treating you like that. Your son who loves you, Chris." I read the letter twice and threw it in the trash without feeling either compassion or satisfaction. It was simply confirmation that decisions have consequences, and that some consequences last a lifetime. Chris was living the consequences of having thrown his mother out of the house, but those consequences were no longer my problem. 2 years after moving to Naples, my life had reached a perfect balance that provided me with constant satisfaction. Every morning I woke up grateful for the decision I had made. The freedom to live without justifying my expenses, without putting up with derogatory comments, without feeling like a burden, was a gift I had given myself and that I valued more every day. The company's profits had continued to grow spectacularly. Frank visited me last week with the annual figures. Miss Miller, this year we have reached $380,000 in net profits. Your total assets now exceed $6 million. Frank, I said as we had coffee on my terrace, do you know what is most satisfying about all this? Tell me, Miss Miller, that when my son kicked me out and called me a stinky old lady, I already had more money than he will earn in his entire life and in the lives of his children. And you never thought about telling him? Never. Let him live with the guilt of having thrown out a poor mother. The truth would only make him feel worse for the wrong reasons. The friends from the golf club had become my true family. Michael, Daniel, Sarah, and the other retirees in the area were the siblings I chose to have. We played 3 times a week, traveled together, celebrated our birthdays, and supported each other in difficult times. Just yesterday, Michael said something that touched my heart. Jane, you have shown that it is never too late to start a new life. You are our example of dignity and courage. Daniel added, what I like about you is that you don't hold a grudge. You made a decision and you have maintained it without becoming bitter. There is nothing to be bitter about, I replied. I am living the best time of my life. I have health, money, true friends, and the peace of mind of knowing that no one can disrespect me because I don't depend on anyone. During these 2 years, I have continued to receive attempts to contact me from different people. Linda, Robert's sister, has called me several times. Pamela sent me a very long letter explaining that she was going to separate from Chris and asking me to reconsider my position. I even received a letter from a priest from the parish in Naperville asking me to forgive my son in the name of Christian love. To all of them, I have given the same answer. There are words that, once spoken, cannot be erased, and there are humiliations that do not deserve forgiveness. Chris chose to kick me out and call me a stinky old lady. Now I choose to live without him. Last week I received a very special call. It was Dylan, my older grandson, who is now 17 years old. Grandma, it's Dylan. I got your phone number and I wanted to talk to you. Hearing his voice moved me very much. Hello, Dylan. How are you? Fine, Grandma, but very sad because I never see you. Dylan, Grandma is also sad about not seeing you, but there are problems with your father that cannot be solved. Grandma, I'm older now and I understand things. Dad told me that he kicked you out of the house and that he said very ugly things to you. Yes, Dylan, your father disrespected me in a very serious way. Grandma, Dad also told me that you are very rich and that you had money when you lived with us. Yes, Dylan, Grandma has enough money to live very well. And why didn't you ever tell us? Because I wanted to know if your family loved me for being your grandmother or just for my money. Grandma, we love you very much. Abby and I talk about you constantly. I love you very much too, but I can't have a relationship with you as long as your father keeps trying to manipulate me through your feelings. Grandma, when I turn 18, can I come visit you? Of course, Dylan. When you are of legal age, you can come see me as many times as you want. Is that long from now? 1 year, Dylan. When you turn 18, you will be free to make your own decisions. Grandma, are you going to tell me the whole truth about what happened then? I'm going to tell you the whole truth, Dylan. You're going to understand why Grandma had to go away and why it was the right decision. Grandma, one more question. Are you happy now? Dylan, I am happier now than in the last 20 years. After hanging up with Dylan, I was very moved. It was comforting to know that at least one of my grandchildren understood the situation and that he wanted to maintain a relationship with me when he was older. Abby was still very young, but Dylan was old enough to understand that there were serious reasons behind my decision. A month after Dylan's call, I received another unexpected call. It was from Frank, but this time it was not to talk about the company. Miss Miller, I have to tell you something that I think you should know. What happened, Frank? Your son Chris tried to commit suicide. The news hit me very hard. How? When? Yesterday evening. Pamela called me because she didn't know how to contact you. He's in the hospital, but it seems he's going to survive. What happened exactly? It seems he took a lot of pills. His wife found him unconscious and took him to the hospital. I was quiet for several minutes. Miss Miller, are you okay? Yes, Frank, I'm fine. Do you want me to take you to the hospital in Chicago? No, Frank. I don't want to go to the hospital. Are you sure? He's your son. Frank, Chris made the decision to kick me out of his life. I made the decision to disappear from his. His desperate decisions are not going to change my position. Miss Miller, I understand your position, but a suicide attempt is something very serious. It is very serious, but it is not my responsibility. Chris is a grown man who has to assume the consequences of his actions, and if he doesn't survive, it will be because he chose not to survive. I have nothing to do with that decision. 3 days later, Frank called me to give me more news. Miss Miller, your son has been released from the hospital. He is physically fine, but they have recommended psychological treatment. I'm glad he's okay, but that doesn't change anything. Miss Miller, Pamela wants to talk to you. She says it's very urgent. Frank, I've already spoken with Pamela several times. I have nothing more to say to her. She says that Chris has lost the house and that they are going to be on the street with the children. Frank, that's not my problem. Miss Miller, don't you feel any compassion for your son? Frank, for 2 years my son has tried to have me declared incompetent. He has hired detectives to harass me. He has used the children to manipulate me emotionally. And he has done everything possible to take my money. Why should I feel compassion for him? Because he is your son, Miss Miller. He was my son. Now he is a stranger who kicked me out of his house. That night, I reflected a lot on the news of Chris's suicide attempt. It was a very sad situation, but it also confirmed that he had reached the point of no return in the consequences of his actions. During these 2 years, Chris had lost several jobs, his wife had left him, he had lost his house, and he had reached a situation of total desperation. But all of that had been the result of his inability to accept the consequences of having thrown me out of his life. If I had given in to his emotional blackmail, if I had forgiven his lack of respect, if I had become part of his life again, he would not have learned anything. He would have continued to treat me badly because he would have confirmed that he could disrespect me without serious consequences. My decision to stand firm had been hard, but it had been the only way to maintain my dignity and to teach him that words have permanent consequences. Today, 3 years after Chris kicked me out of his house, screaming "stinky old lady," I can say with complete peace of mind that I made the right decision. I am sitting on my terrace in Naples, watching the sunset over the Gulf of Mexico, enjoying a glass of red wine, and reflecting on everything that has changed in my life. My assets have continued to grow spectacularly. The transportation company now generates annual profits of over $400,000, and my total fortune exceeds $7 million. But the most important thing is not the money, but the peace of mind I have achieved. For the first time in decades, I live without the anxiety of facing situations that make me feel inferior or unwanted. Last week I turned 71, and I celebrated at my favorite restaurant in Naples with my friends from the golf club. It was a simple party, but full of genuine affection. During the toast, Michael said something that moved me. To Jane, the woman who taught us that dignity has no price and that it is never too late to choose happiness. When I got home that night, I found a letter in my mailbox. It was from Dylan, my grandson, who is now 18 years old. The letter said, "Grandma, I'm of legal age now, and I want to come visit you. I've understood why you left, and I don't blame you. Dad has been very sick, but he's better now and has a job again. Abby and I have grown up, and we understand that decisions have consequences. Can we come see you?" The letter moved me deeply, but it also confirmed that I had made the right decision. My grandchildren had grown up, and now they understood that their grandmother had not disappeared on a whim, but because their father had disrespected her in an unforgivable way. I replied to Dylan with a very affectionate letter. "Dylan, of course you can come see me whenever you want. I am very eager to meet the young adults you have become, but I want you to understand one thing. I can have a relationship with you, but I will never have a relationship with your father again. When you come alone or with your mother, but not with him." A month ago, I received another unexpected visit. It was Pamela, my former daughter-in-law, who had come from Chicago to talk to me. She was very changed. Thinner, with gray hair, with an expression of tiredness that I had not seen on her before. "Jane," she said when I opened the door. "Can we talk?" "Hello, Pamela. Come in." We sat in the living room, and she looked around with an expression of amazement. "Jane, this house is incredible. I didn't imagine you lived like this." "Pamela, I've always had money to live like this. The difference is that now I do it without hiding. Jane, I have come to ask for your forgiveness on behalf of Chris and on my own behalf. Pamela, apologies do not erase humiliations. I know, Jane, but I needed to tell you that Chris has realized the terrible mistake he made. He has been going to psychological therapy for a year and has learned to manage his frustration. I'm happy for him, but that doesn't change anything between us. Jane, Chris has lost everything. His job, his house, his family. He has hit rock bottom completely. Pamela, he chose to kick me out of his life. I chose to disappear from his. The consequences have been what they had to be. Is there nothing I can do to make you forgive him? Nothing, Pamela. Absolutely nothing. Jane, and what if he tells you that he is willing to accept any condition you set? Pamela, there are no conditions. There are words that, once said, cannot be erased. Pamela was quiet for a few minutes. Jane, can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. Are you happy living like this? Without family? Pamela, I am happier now than in the last 20 years. I have friends who respect me, a beautiful house, enough money to do whatever I want, and the peace of mind of not having to put up with humiliations from anyone. Don't you miss the children? I miss the children, but I don't miss their father's emotional manipulation. Jane, the children love you very much. They talk about you constantly, and I love them. That's why I've decided that when they are completely independent, they can be part of my life if they want. Before leaving, Pamela asked me one last question. Jane, is there anything Chris can do to show that he has changed? Pamela, the problem is not whether Chris has changed or not. The problem is that he showed who he really was when he thought he could disrespect me without consequences. After Pamela left, I kept thinking about our conversation. It was clear that Chris had suffered a lot during these 3 years, that he had lost practically everything, and that he had learned some important lessons. But it was also clear that his suffering was not going to change my decision. During these 3 years, I have received dozens of calls, letters, and visits from people asking me to forgive Chris. Relatives, friends, acquaintances. Everyone has tried to convince me to give him a second chance, but my position has always been the same. There are lines that should not be crossed, and once they are crossed, the consequences are permanent. This morning, while I was taking my daily walk on the beach, I reflected on these 3 years. I have lost a son, but I have gained a life. I have lost grandchildren temporarily, but I have gained my dignity forever. I have lost a family that despised me, but I have found friends who respect me. If you who have listened to me up to this point have gone through something similar, if someone in your family has ever thrown you out of the house, if someone has called you a stinky old lady, if someone has made you feel that you are a burden, I want you to know something very important. You don't have to put up with it. Life is too short to spend it with people who don't value you, even if those people share your blood. I lost a son, but I gained my self-esteem. I lost grandchildren temporarily, but I gained the peace of living without humiliation. I lost a family, but I gained the freedom to be myself. Today, at 71 years old, I can say that I am happier than ever. I have a beautiful house facing the sea, a net worth of $7 million, true friends who respect me for who I am, not for what I have, and the satisfaction of knowing that no one can disrespect me because I don't depend on anyone. My son kicked me out, believing I was a poor, stinky old woman. Now he lives with the consequences of having thrown a millionaire mother out of his life who only wanted to be respected. That is the justice of life. Everyone reaps what they sow. And I, the stinky old lady he kicked out, live like a queen on the Gulf Coast, surrounded by people who truly love me, enjoying every day the freedom that cost me so much to obtain, but that was worth every tear I shed. Next week, Dylan and Abby are coming to visit me. I'm going to meet the young adults they have become. I'm going to tell them the whole truth about what happened, and I'm going to show them that their grandmother made the right decision. Because sometimes, to regain your dignity, you have to have the courage to lose everything else.